This is our bedside fairy lights that we designed. We first built the nook, of course, and then late in the project we designed the lights. We were going to do something with funky metal lights and decided against it. We're really happy with how these turned out. Here's one a little closer up. You can see the quality of the light we really like, the amount of light. This is at night. It's just enough to read by, but not dazzlingly bright. This is with both of them on, late in the evening. So this is what you get when you order a fairy light. And this, of course, is all waterproof. We didn't realize that when we designed our nooks, what this was going to look like, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So to start out, you need to do your 4-inch spheres or 3-inch spheres, however big you want to do it. We did 4-inch. Now we glued it on top of the joint. This is where the cable comes in from the power source and connects to the copper fairy lights. On top of that, so that there was never any stress on that. Plus that means this stays inside the sphere. Now whenever we wrap this sphere, everything comes back to the top on the outside of this joint, and thus there's no stress on it. Now you can see this joint that we're talking about is down here. We came and we turned 90 degrees, came in the opposite direction, and glued it. And then of course you just keep wrapping. And the copper is just the right pliability. It works really well for this kind of thing. You can see that the joint between the two cables stays inside the sphere, and everything comes to the top of it. This thing really is practically weightless, so it's not like it pulls on the cable much at all, but still we didn't want any stress on that joint. Here's a close-up of it with my 5-year-old photobombing in the background. One thing I would like to point out, we glue these things very frequently, every couple of inches, or at least every halfway around. And when we glue them, we put it all the way around both cables so that the glue actually can adhere to itself. You're not trying to glue one cable to the next, but you're actually wrapping the whole thing, and the glue just holds, it's a blob of glue that holds both of them together. This is what the finished sphere looks like. We love that copper. We didn't think we'd like the copper that much, but we really like how it turned out against that recycled wood and against the white. We'd originally wanted silver, but we're glad they came in copper. And of course that's what it looks like on. Now this is the transformer. So LEDs take a very low voltage compared to your power source and your outlet, your wall. So this comes in at 120 volts, and your LEDs, especially these fairy lights, are only 4.5 volts and like 0.6 amps. So if you plug them in without a transformer, they would last a half a second or less, and they would instantly start to smoke, nearly instant. So you have to have this transformer. So when you wire this into your wall power, you have to maintain this transformer. You have a junction box where that connection usually occurs, and there's just not enough room in a junction box for this 6-inch long transformer and watertight connection that they have here, which we didn't realize before we bought them. We didn't know they were going to be waterproof. And none of this fit up in the junction box, so we had to, this is of course a standard junction box where your house wires come out. So of course we did the only natural thing, reasonable thing, and we cut the casing off the transformer. Be very careful when you're doing this. There are resistors and electronics just inside this case. But if you're careful, they're about a 1/16 of an inch inside of it. So you have room, but you just have to be careful. I'll show you in a second what that looks like. So you just go all the way around it. And for any leftover spots you can't quite cut, we used a screwdriver and just turned it sideways, popped everything loose. And this is what you end up with. There's some spring clips that attach to the prongs for the outlet. This is the transformer right here, some diodes and resistors to change the voltage from AC to DC. And then here's your output lines. You just need this whole chip right here, this whole bar. And it just slides right out. When you open it up, you can just slide it out. It's on these rails. These are just spring friction clips, and everything just slides right out. You can see these rails it's on. And now you want to clip these wires off, keep them as long attached to the board as you can. So just clip them off right there. And there's your there's your board. That's what you need. Now, this is your input side, of course. We just took an old extension cord, cut it off, and hooked it up. You want to test it first because these LEDs are polarity specific. you have to have them the incoming power on the right side. So you can see some of these black wires have little white dots on them. One side does, one side doesn't. The white dotted side usually goes on the red, and the non-white dotted side goes on the black, of course, but if you get it switched around, it just won't work. It won't do anything bad, it just won't work. So you need to test it, make sure before you solder that you have them right. Now, when you plug this in, of course, this is going to be live, so don't touch that. Or make sure you do whatever you have to do to make sure you don't get electrocuted. I put it in a box, just set it in a box, plugged it in, and it came on. If it didn't come on, you would need to go back to this, switch these two, and plug it in again, make sure it comes on. Once you've done that, and you know which side is which, you can take it out to the soldering table. Now, soldering is super simple. If you have never done it, watch some YouTube videos. You just essentially get some flux, dip some flux on these things, heat it up with a solder iron, and then touch the solder to it. And a little more than that, but it's pretty simple. It melts the solder around your connection, gives you both a mechanical and an electronic seal, electrical seal to that, so that electricity can pass through easily. And then we just put an 8-inch length or so of 18 gauge cable on the end of these, so that we can then hook these into the house wiring system. And we also had shrink wrap that will fix to both of these ends and melt that. Shrink wrap is essentially just insulation that when you heat it up, it shrinks around tightly around these. I didn't get a picture of that in this, but make sure you do that. There's the finished solder, and again, shrink wrap will go over top of these so that you don't get anybody touching your electricity. This is then we shove all that up in the junction box, put the cover plate on, and we put a Romex cable. That's what actually hangs the light. Again, we don't have any stress on the joint there. We don't have any stress on our electrical joint on the inside. And this thing is so lightweight that it doesn't even straighten out the cable all the way. So we're pretty content that we're fine. If you're concerned, you could add a third cable, a steel cable, tiny steel cable to that to hold the weight. We weren't concerned. And then for the cover plate, we just took some steel, sanded it down, drilled some holes, cut a slot in it so that we didn't have to worry about taking everything apart to put it through. And then, but make sure these are well sanded so you don't cut your wire when you slide it on. This just slides right in place. We put some trim screws in, and we're finished with the light. You can see and you don't even notice that slot when you're in real life. Here's what it looks like at night. Again, we just love the light from it. You can tell by how many pictures we have of it. Now, after a couple of these, we decided there has to be a better way, so we ordered one that had a 90 degree, because that would then fit up in our junction box without having to take apart our transformer case. And then we just soldered some of this 18 gauge wire straight to these clips, to the outlet prongs, and then the other end into the house wiring, and all that just goes up in the junction box. This is just showing that picture where we wrapped it around, put flux on it, soldered it on. There's the solder. We did put heat shrink on top of these also. Again, didn't have the picture of the heat shrink. And then this is the transformer that gets placed up in this junction box. Now, we did install a deeper junction box here because of this. It allowed us to do that, which caused us another problem later on, but that's what happens when you design your lights after you have your junction boxes installed. Again, just for those who don't know, Romex clip isn't being shown here. We do have our Romex clip in there, but this is our house wiring coming down, this is our jumper, and this is the transformer, and all that just gets shoved up in the junction box. This is the cable coming down, and then this is the cover plate with the cable connector with the light that you can't see down here because it's too bright. Now, we do wrap some black tape around the cable because it's so thin. These cable connectors are made for thicker wire, and that gives it some body. It also keeps us from squishing our cable with the clamp. And then there's what it looks like without its trim piece. In fact, because we put a deeper junction box here, this cable connector actually sticks below our wood trim, which caused us some problems, so we had to cut a hole in our trim piece, and this is a little Dremel tool with a grinder blade attached, and then we just slip that on. actually looks just great like that. No one even notices. You can't even tell that anything is amiss. Now, if we were going to start from scratch with these lights and have them designed first, we'd do it slightly differently. We would set them way deeper up in the wall so that we had 16 inches or so, and then we'd mount one junction box, run the house wiring in, and just mount a regular outlet to that. Put a cover plate on that, and then we'd put these extensions on, 1 or 2 or however many you need. That you could just plug your fairy lights right in. And then on the last one, we'd put a cover plate with the Romex cable connector on it. And then we'd hang it just like we did in our other units, our other lights. But then if anything ever went wrong, we could just unplug it. Plus it would save us all that time of taking apart transformers or soldering jumpers on. So if you have lots of space in your ceiling where you're going to put this light, then that would be the way to go. That's what it looks like at night with both of them on. There's what they look like when they're off, which again we just love. This is one of our units. It's Cedar Hill 2 at our little boutique hotel / Airbnb. There's the other side off. Another close-up. You can tell we liked it. We took lots of pictures showing how well it displays that recycled wood and our recycled wood shutters, our barn wood shutters. I really like that. This is on the back wall. We used old furring strips as our backdrop. Again, another one at night with just one on. You can see how the light, it's just the right amount of light. And if you'd like to come stay with us, test these out yourself, you're welcome to. It's Cedar Hill in Charleston, West Virginia. If you're ever passing through, we'd love to have you.